but you can't represent yourself as a licensed architect or even use the architect word unless you have the stamp. So this is a legal, boundary that everybody has to. Deborah went through the experience examination. I'm not going to go over it again. But these things are okay. So New York State just changed this, but after your third year of school, you are eligible to take the licensing exam. Okay? They used to, and I should have updated this slide, but they used to add up points between what your education was and your experience, and that they add up points, and that got you into the exam. And I'll go through the point system in a minute. But you can now, how many of you are in third year or beyond? Okay, so you could all start taking licensing. New York State will allow you to start counting your experience from the moment you get out of high school if you're working in the legal practice of architecture. So they have a series of points that'll get you to becoming a licensed architect. So this slide is from my Pratt talk. Where's the, which one of these is the arrow? Oh. I'm sorry. I wanted the point to, maybe we looked it up. Yeah, I wanted the pointer, the laser. It's the red one? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. So, are you all in the undergraduate B-Arch program here? No? Okay. So they have, New York State has a series of tiers of requirements in order to get you to qualify for becoming licensed. So let me just run through them. A B-Arch will get you 9 units, is worth 9 units. You have to get to 12, and they will give you 3, to get to the other 12, you need 3 years of experience working, 2 of which have to be for a licensed architect. If you're, I'm going to come around on the screen, but if you have a master's of architecture, that actually gets you 10 units. That gives you, see the 9 plus 1, but then you have to work for 2 years with the licensed architect. These are New York State's requirements. Okay? If you have a B-Arch from a foreign university that the state recognizes, you get 8 credits, and then they require you to work for 4 years, 2 of which have to be with a licensed architect. If you have a bachelor in science, that will get you 7 units. Then you'll have to work for 5 years, 4 with a licensed architect. If you have a degree in interior design, that'll get you 5 units. I'm here. Of which 4 have to be with the licensed architect. If you have an associate's degree, get 2 units, you have to work for 10, and then New York State has the work requirement that they permit you to work without a degree, but you have to work for 12 years. 7 with a licensed architect. So they have a lot of opportunities for people, depending upon what their education levels are. And then these are the Ncarb hours, but I think Deborah covered them. So what I just wanted to show with this slide was these are the experience hours with Ncarb. Uh-oh. And then really your professional practice classes really cover a lot of the material that you study that you will need to learn for the exam. So pay attention in those classes. There's a lot to learn. Okay. And I think you went through mentors, okay? Okay, so these are the education categories, and these is off the website, but that bar chart that I went through before really is the graphic version of this. And these are the legal practices of architecture, okay? This is, I think, the largest, most critical mistake that a lot of people make. They'll get a job with the firm, and they'll suddenly find out that the firm not recognized by New York State to satisfy the experience requirement. So to be, or if you're working for someone, they can be the sole proprietor or a licensed architect who has a small shop and is running a couple of people. That's called a sole proprietor. It's a very simple system. There are a lot of sole proprietors around. A professional partnership, and that's where all partners are registered architects. And this is very important for New York State, that the people who own the company are registered architects. There's professional service corps in which the personnel need to be licensed architects. There's limited liability. There's a few of them, and there's one that I forgot to put on here, which is a design partnership, in which the firm must be owned by 75% architects. I think it's 75-25. Yeah. So there's called a design professional corporation. And the state will recognize your experience if you work for one of them. And then there are grandfathered corporations. So if you're working for someone and it has the word corp, C-O-R-P, at the end of the title, they're not legal entities practicing architecture, unless they were grandfathered. And that was before these laws went into effect, and there's a handful of them around. Not many, but a couple. If you have any questions, you can contact New York State, and they will let you know if you're working in the legal practice of architecture, okay? I've had examples where people run into this, they'll contact me, and they'll have lost all none of their experience will have been valid because they weren't working for a firm where both partners were licensed architects, okay? That's 50-50. Sometimes it's a husband and wife team. One is licensed, but the other isn't, but they have a partnership, and you think that everything is great. The state will look, you'll submit your experience, they'll see who's working there, they'll go to the website, and they'll check to see if the partners are licensed. So you have to make sure that this is the case. They will let you work, credit J, for entities that aren't licensed architects. So you can work in a company like that and get 1 year or 2 years, depending upon what category you're working, applying in, and have that experience count. So you can work in an engineer's office, okay? A government agency that does architectural work, a contractor's office, that as long as they're building buildings, a related design discipline such as landscape architecture. You could teach in an NAAB accredited school. And you can conduct or participate in structured research that's recognized by your institution as being legitimate research, not just, oh, I studied something for a while and did some research. Okay. I remember once when I got some work doing beach houses, and I learned how to design hurricane calculations and wind loads and explosions and windows and uplift and all these things for buildings. And I contacted the state and I said, does this count towards my continuing education needs? And they said, no, only if you took a class. I said, but I learned more than I've ever learned in a class. But you have to go through their systems, okay? So you need to make sure that you're always in line with the state. Okay, so this graphic is really to show the dual path, and it's very important to satisfy the dual path. One is, you have to, for both the states and Ncarb, you have to satisfy both. So Ncarb will have one educational requirement, you have to make sure you hit the state's educational requirement, okay? They're not always the same, you have to check both. Ncarb has an experience requirement, the state may have their own experience requirement. In New York, it's 3 years. Some states, as long as you satisfy Ncarb, they're okay with that. but New York it's 3 years. And then the ARE is usually accepted by the states, with, I think, 2 states that are different. California has the seismic, and Florida has lateral loads for applicants. Okay? Then, once you satisfy this, you pass the line, you become licensed. Your records from Ncarb get transmitted to the state boards. State boards will review them. They'll review all this information that you send them. And then, let you become an architect. It's that easy. Then, if you want to practice architecture in another state, it's called reciprocity. So you're all going to have to choose your first state of practice. Okay? And then from there, if you want to practice in another state, you have to apply for reciprocity. Okay? So what will happen is, if you're in good standing with your state, you'll file a request to Ncarb to submit your record to another jurisdiction. They'll send it to that licensing board. And if you meet the requirements, they will give you the opportunity to practice architecture in another state. Okay? But not all states are the same. So if you get your initial license in Wisconsin, which just says if you satisfy Ncarb, you satisfy Wisconsin. And you want to get reciprocity in New York. New York is going to look at all the legal practice of architecture and the amount of years you spent in apprenticeship before you became licensed, and make sure that you satisfy that. So they'll make sure you satisfy their requirements as well as Wisconsin's. Wisconsin's, I think, is the easiest state in the union to get a license. So that's called reciprocity. And that's a little bit ahead of you guys, but I think that's something to realize, that once you get started, you're in, and then you maintain your Ncarb record, and that's how they transfer your units from one state to the other. I think that's it. Yes, that's it. Thank you. This.
Thank you, Nick.
This.
Thank you very much, Nick and Deborah. I'm assisting Celine with the moderating. So I'm going to call up Christopher, and Ken Conzelman, as well as Deborah and Nicholas come back up. This is the opportunity where you get to ask any questions. Yeah, we're going to do a quick panel. We really want to get you guys to personalize this, because everybody's journey is different. And it's good. And it shouldn't mimic the same thing, because you are your unique architect with your input. And that's what the clients want, right? What is unique about each of you? And so for each of these 4 up front, I'm sure they have their own separate experience that they can share with you. And the great thing about Celine is she's an associate, so she's on her path to licensure. And she's also an emerging professional with AI Brooklyn. Part of these journeys we take them together and in community, so we highly recommend that you be engaged. A lot of the American Institute of Architects events are free for students. There's even scholarships. One of the things that was mentioned was the fees. Thanks, Deborah. It is hefty, but there's a scholarship called Jason Pettigrew ARE. And so if you get that, there's like over $1,000 in there, and that covers all of your licensing exams. So you want to pursue those types of grants, scholarships, and we're trying to build one up in AIA Brooklyn so that students can also apply, especially those who are still in college and starting the licensing journey in junior year, senior year.
Is this working? Yes. So I had mentioned Sarah. It's basically helping architects is another organization. It works closely with the AIA and communicates with Ncarb a lot. They also will help pay for exams as well, especially if you start as a student. So as you're exploring that scholarship, you can also look into the Sarah one. I know that they're very passionate about making it easy for students.
Thank you. So without further ado, you met Deborah and you met Nicholas. This is Christopher Mancia. He's a New York-based architect, founder of ArchNoma and Architecture Nomad. Um, his work bridges building science research and the technical execution of licensed practice, and he is deeply committed to mentoring emerging professionals through the path of licensure. Next, we have faculty. So if you ever have questions, we have an in-house licensing advisor from Ncarb, and that is Kenneth Konzelman. He's a registered architect in New York since 1990 and co-founding principal of OWO Architects. He has been teaching at City Tech since 1991, a wealth of knowledge, and he's also taught the practice management as well. And he is a tenured faculty member and director of the architectural internship program here at City Tech. He supports students as they transition into professional practice and a career spanning wide range of roles across firms and institutions. So he brings both the academic and real world insight to the licensure process. This is a great opportunity to have a full variety of different trajectory, different pathways, including an associate who's in your shoes. So I want to start with Chris. If you could share a little bit of your whole process, what would be that one tip that you give to all the students?
I think documentation is super important. So Deborah mentioned sort of keeping in track of your hours, keeping track of the exams, sort of where you've gotten them. But I think also just connecting with the professors and the faculty that you have here, because there are a lot of students that from the recent VR program have either gone on to work with professors, have gone on their first internship with other professors. So I think that's a huge addition to just the process.
I'm going to add my 2 cents here. I'm also an adjunct on Saturdays. I tell my students who are first year building tech students, I say, everything that's on the ARE exam, you have in your textbooks. So documenting, definitely take sketchbooks and whatever you read, there are specifics in the categories, even the materiality, building envelope, especially the building envelope. You need to know all of those layers of how it works in the northeast zone versus the southern zone. And this makes you a better architect. And so if you take good notes while you're reading a lot of your courses in the curriculum here, you can just pull those sketchbooks off your shelf as you're studying. Halfway there. Okay, I'm gonna pass the mic down, and I would love that if each of you can give your tips, tricks, navigating the journey, and also introduce that your journey, how long it was. I know I shared a little bit, but highlight again and just how you were able to get through, and then a support system that you found that was very valuable for you.
I'm gonna try and click through these. Awesome. So yeah, a lot of my sort of support system was my advisor. So I had Professor Leah as an advisor. I came in as a transfer student. So she allowed for a lot of information to come in. She saw that sort of I was working and coming to school at the same time, both doing full time. And I think that is one of the things that I'll definitely push. If you can sort of connect with the professors, you might have them throughout your entire journey. I think, yeah, I'm a City Tech grad. I'm sort of recently graduated, 2025, the art student, but I also have my license. So just talking about sort of some of the experiences. My first projects were kind of in healthcare and were during COVID. So you never know what your first internship job is going to be like. It's never really what you expect. And so that was one that taught me a lot in a very quick amount of time. And so walking through the exams, I'm just gonna quickly go through and then land at the last sort of slide. I went through the same process, did my studying for my exams. I took my exams while I was still a student, so definitely can take your exams after, I believe it's your third year of being a student. gonna quickly roll through. It's super hard to see. Yeah, so one of the biggest things that you're gonna notice, which is something that is kind of skipped, is after you get all your requirements for Ncarb, it does get sent to New York State. They might have additional requirements. So for example, in my case, they asked about additional work experience because they usually have it so that you start work after you graduate. I was one of the cases who was working sort of full-time at the same time, so that was one of the requirements they requested. But towards the end of that space, you get this email, and it tells you you've met all the requirements. It's probably the coolest email you're gonna receive. You always anticipated something else, and yeah, when this came across, it was kind of sort of putting a close to that chapter. Celebrate, that's a huge tip, because in architecture we have a tendency to just roll through projects and you don't stop. So your one project finishes, you start the next one. So you make it through any part of the journey, graduating, your exams. Remember to take some time to celebrate is a huge accomplishment. I'm gonna give you some tips for starting your own practice. So after you're a licensed architect, your name appears on the website. There's a secondary process where if you want to start your own practice, you actually speak to the education department and they confirm that you can use the name that you want for your firm. It's kind of funny, we started at Architecture Nomad, pushed to ArchNoma, and then we're told that we actually prefer Architecture Nomad. So that's an interesting thing to learn. Nobody tells you that. So yeah, and then the last thing that I'll probably talk about my journey is that for me, it's super important. I didn't have someone in my community that was an architect, so I figured let me kind of, process everything, put it into a document. So if you do scan the QR code, it's all the sort of tips and tricks, and it talks about everything, interviewing, licensure, and sort of gives you all the guidelines for what everybody's been kind of talking about during this presentation. Yeah.
I forgot the question.
Your tips and tricks and how long it took you in the support group.
Sure.
Thank you. I don't know if I need that.
But I did go over quite a few of my tips and tricks at the beginning. It took me about 4 years to get my license after I graduated. Like you, I worked while finishing my education. I didn't do full-time, but I did full-time like during summer break and winter break, and then was part-time throughout the semester. Did that until I graduated, and then jumped right into full-time employment. So the work kind of overlapped the education, and then it took me about a year and a half after graduation to get that kick that I had mentioned earlier, to get that push to start my exams, and it took me a year and a half to get my exams completed. As I said, the tips and tricks, I kind of went over that like little hack with the whiteboard. My advice would be to just ask questions, whether that's to your professors like you said, or if you have a job, ask the professionals in the office questions. I've asked smart questions, I've asked stupid questions, but regardless, it can be scary to ask sometimes, and I understand that, but show the desire to learn, whether that's through the job or just asking advice on the exams. And then you said celebrate the wins. Yes, celebrate the wins, but you can mourn the loss for like a day. So one of the things that I forgot to talk about was I had failed one of the exams twice. I did mention that. It sucked, I'm not gonna lie. I allowed myself to mourn for one day, and then that next day, I actually scheduled a different exam. Now the reason why, and this is something again that I forgot to mention, is if you do fail an exam, you cannot schedule it for another 2 months. I didn't want to waste those 2 months feeling sorry for myself, so what I did was I took a different exam that was next in line. I studied for 2 months, took the other one, passed it, and then went back, studied for the one that I had failed for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I failed it again, so I did the same process, and by that time, that was the last exam that I needed to pass, and I believe that was the PPD one. It was just really difficult, I'm not gonna lie, but mourn the loss, but not too long. It would be my advice and tip and trick. Don't get in your head about it. Unfortunately, it is common. It shouldn't be, but it is common, and you just gotta get through it. And I believe that was it.
Testing 1, 2. What's this?